We are here with Big Woz. You know him, you love him. Most favored guest of the Ringer fame, consummate Mets guy, Mets fan.
Yes,
but
sir.
Woz, speaking of which, you would be a terrible sports gambler because you've got a little bit of patron saint of doomed causes to you. You are like a moth to flame, attracted to the tragic. You're the guy.
I am.
I walk into Top Golf in Vegas. Says, "Hey, Woz, what you doing?" It's like, "I'm rooting for England to finally bring the cup home."
So true.
Well, you know how that goes.
Dude,
Goes about the same way a Jet season goes. Goes about the same way a Mets season usually go.
Yeah, it's so true, dude. Like I like that's just been my thing. Like when people are dumping on a sports figure, like I remember just like after like Alex Rodriguez fell out of favor, I'd be the guy like being like, well, actually he's way better than Jeter and blah 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 blah. Like I was that guy. At one point, the nadir of this, Ethan, was when I tried to save Dwight Howard. I tried to put the cape on for Dwight Howard, and like It was like 3 weeks, and I was like, "This is impossible. Like not even I can do this."
No,
he is irredeemable, bro.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I don't know what it was about Howard that made him that way. I know people have some theories. There's some generalized silliness that I would observe in the locker room when I would cover some of the teams that he was playing for, and hey, sometimes people are a little bit silly. Sometimes big men don't care that much, and it doesn't necessarily correlate to how they do. I don't know if anybody has a theory as to why Giancarlo Stanton is just a savage in the postseason when he's also this guy who won't run out a grounder in the regular season. It doesn't seem to care that much, but he's just amazing. And then Aaron Judge, oh my God, you love him. The paragon of what you want in an athlete, incredible sports figure, a Yankees Yankee, and he doesn't really get it done. I don't, it's probably small sample size, maybe something else, but that's the state of things.
Yeah, baseball playoffs are just, it is the ultimate, just like random shit happening. I was just listening to Lebitard, and Stugatz was doing a bit where the only postseason home runs that matter are the ones that happen in New York. And like Lebitard was like, all right, so tell me the 5 biggest New York postseason home runs. And I thought to the person that came to my mind was Jim Leyritz, who's just like a random freaking dude on the Yankees who had some big ass hits in the postseason for him. Like I should not know that guy's name, but for the fact that he had some huge, home runs for the Yankees in the postseason. You know what I mean? Like baseball is just like that.
Yeah, I mean, Sandoval against Verlander, where, I mean, does that speak to something amazing about Panda, or is it just he swung practically with his eyes closed, top of the zone, and it just went out of there, and he did it twice to Verlander and crushed him, and it's a bit of a flip of the coin. I don't know. I wish baseball did a better job of tricking me. When they entered fewer teams into the postseason, I could actually trick myself into thinking that the best team won. But now when a team that goes 500 can potentially win it, then I don't even know. I didn't intend to talk baseball, though. I don't think anybody wants my baseball analysis. Well, maybe some people. I don't know. This is going to be sports media heavy, Woz. We haven't done this in a while. I like getting your thoughts about the terrain, about the industry. I think this is what people want from this podcast a lot of the time, is what's going on in sports media. There has been a lot of upheaval in NBA media, especially at ESPN. A little bit at The Ringer, which I don't think you can really get into because you're an employee of The Ringer, but more so ESPN. And we've been talking about it on this podcast. I got Tim Kawakami's perspective on the ouster of Zach Lowe. I want your thoughts on everything that's going on. I'll set it up for you. Adrian Wojnarowski, lead newsbreaker, surprise retires, gonna run St. Bonaventure's basketball team out of nowhere. Boom. Zach Lowe, surprise, fired. I should say laid off. I think he did a great job. Nobody disputes it, but too expensive. He's out. And now Shams Charania, after some rumors, some reporting on how Woj behind the scenes was trying to get maybe Jeff Passan from the MLB to take over his old job instead of his hated protege, his hated rival. Nope. ESPN brings Shams Charania in. He will be their NBA newsbreaker. Cheaper than Woj, still pretty expensive. What the hell is going on at this company?
I think because of the craziness that's happening with Disney, which is ESPN's parent company, like anything else, bro, like even whether you're Zach Lowe or Adrian Wojnarowski, like you're a freaking number. That's it. They have to pile up numbers to bring to the shareholders so that they can show the shareholders in Wall Street that they're taking things seriously, because that's how you show these freaking ghouls that you're being a serious person, is by firing folks. And I think, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, look, I've done no reporting on this, but the Woj thing always felt like more than just this guy's retiring. He probably got word that they were like, bro, we're moving on from you. We have to come up with a good number to show people that we're taking our waning audience and influence seriously, and we gotta fire people. And so Woj has a big ass number, and they were probably like, bro, we're not bringing you back, and it's just, you're just an accounting freaking error. Honestly, man, like that's how these people get looked at. Zach Lowe, by every single metric of our business, in terms of audience, in terms of the quality of work, it's unimpeachable. Like, he is a success at ESPN, but he made a big number, and so they just added his ass to the pile. And, Shams could come in, he's cheaper than Woj to do the exact same job. And, like, what I thought was hilarious about all of this shit, Ethan, was basically right after Woj steps down, the Karl Towns trade gets announced, which is just a huge NBA story. Yeah. Shams breaks it. We get the extra analysis from, guys like my guy John Krasinski, our former colleague at The Athletic, Fred Katz, all the other New York guys, Ian Begley, all these other guys that add color to the news. And life goes on. Nobody was like, damn, Woj would have brought something crazy. No, he wouldn't have.
I saw one tweet saying that from, I can't remember the tweeter exactly, and I was thinking, what are you even talking about? I can't recapitulate it, but it was, Woj would have something spicy about something involving Cat. I said, no, he wouldn't. That's CAA. He wouldn't. That's CAA. He would have broken it first, most likely, though I should say, in fairness to my former colleague, the great John Krasinski, there's a very good chance John would have broken that before Woj, but Woj would have been leader on the Vegas board to break it because it's a CAA guy to the CAA team. That's the Knicks. For those of you who do not know, Woj, represented by Creative Artists Agency, Cat, represented by Creative Artists Agency, and the New York Knicks, run by a former big shot at Creative Artists Agency. That's how a lot of this all goes. That's how the magician often does his trick. But to what you're saying was, it didn't matter. Who cares? Who cares?
At all. And the difference, by the way, the difference between that two, since we're talking about Woj and Zach Lowe, like, I missed Zach's analysis on that deal. The fact that I didn't get to hear Zach's analysis, that's somebody who I would have read and listened to after that deal got done. Immediately, he would have been one of the first people I wanted to hear from, right? Like, and that's the difference to me, which is just like, it just shows you, like, even again, I gotta say this again, like, even somebody like Woj, who, like, bruh, like, his retirement, the freaking hand-wringing of everybody, a giant of the game, and blah, 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 and oh my God, and Woj and this, and he's such a pioneer, and he this, and blah. Bruh, that big-ass deal happened. Shams broke it. We got our analysis. We moved the hell on. We didn't need his ass at all. Like, bro, I'm watching Shams, the clip that's going around on First Take, where his very first take appearance, he breaks Danny Green's retirement. He's like, yo, and I even got a scoop for you. Breaking news, Danny Green is retired from the NBA. He's probably going to go into broadcasting, yada, yada, yada. This, that, and the third. It's like, it's seamless, Ethan. Like, there's nothing is like, this guy's a genius, a giant, and he casts such a large shadow. And bro, he's gone, and it does not matter. That's what I'm struck by.
That's why I have you on, is I'm trying to figure it all out, and I don't have it all figured out as to where we are and why. And I want to make this clear. I could not do what these newsbreakers do. In a way, I do have respect for the process, even if I don't, and I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry if it offends some of my former colleagues, I don't necessarily have respect for the product. I don't necessarily care about you telling me something that I'm just going to learn 10 seconds later or in a press conference. I just don't. I want what you want, which is Zach Lowe contextualizes it for me and gives me an opinion on what this all means. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. The informational aspect is going to come out any which way. So in a way, the people wringing hands, rending garments about Woj were correct in the sense that he is one of the most influential sports media members ever. He got so many people moving in this direction and making the business all about news breaking. At the same time, I don't know what that's worth. I don't know what we get from it. I don't know why we pay for it. I've analogized it to the Annie Hall joke where Woody Allen talks about the craziness of relationships in relation to the guy who says that his brother thinks he's a chicken and he wants him to break out of it, but he needs the eggs. You know, this sort of irrational, I need the product. I need to be first. Our company needs to have this person who breaks the news. I just don't understand the economic benefit. I don't understand why we're on this hamster wheel. I just don't get it, Woz.
So here's another thing, another part of just two things, couple of things. First, with the Zach Lowe piece, I know people are going to be listening to this like, oh my God, they're slurping Zach Lowe. Just to get it out the way, like I have a nice relationship with Zach Lowe. We're not like boys. We don't hang out like, you know, during Thanksgiving or something like that. But like I have a great relationship with him. I'm a big admirer of his work. I feel inspired by what he does, right? Like, and also what I'll say about Zach is like, I know for a fact when I'm reading and listening to him on his podcast, this guy is fucking excited about basketball. That's another thing. Like, this guy is a salesman of our game. Like, he is geeked about this shit. Like, that's another thing that I'm missing right now from this little hiatus he has to go on because of his contract situation. Like, ESPN basically paying him to go away. Like, there's something to what he's doing than, you know, Adrian's like, yeah, here's the news, blah, blah, blah. I can't say a single interesting thing about anybody CAA related because that's not how the news breaking business works. Like, you don't get to be interesting on those people and get the scoops. You either get the scoops and be completely like sanitized in your analysis of the job that these guys are doing, or you don't.
The trade.
That's the trade, right? And so I don't know why I need this when, one, this shit's coming out in a press release any freaking way from the team at some point. So I'm going to get this news no matter what. And two, like, the speed with it's just weird to me because so a buddy of mine who works in our business, but he works on the broadcast side, he doesn't really, he texted me yesterday and Schefter breaks, or it was like 2 days ago, Schefter breaks the Jets coach getting fired. Saleh getting fired, right? 3 minutes later, literally 3 minutes later, Diana Rossini, who's the Athletics, formerly of ESPN, but she's a newsbreaker in her own right, she tweets out, Mo Saleh got fired per sources, right?
Wait, you called him Mo Saleh the soccer player?
Mo Saleh, sorry, Robert
Bobby
Saleh. Robert Saleh got fired, comma, per sources. And he's like, what the fuck is that? Like, isn't her source the Schefter tweet just like the rest of us? And I'm like, you know what's funny? In the real world, if something important would have happened and somebody like some other reporter broke it, like a journalist who's covering that beat, their job is to actually go out and confirm it. Like in sports, like we know if Schefter tweets it, it's basically as good as gold. But like in the real world, that would be that person's job that was also on the beat. They'd have to go out and talk to people who they know and be like, is this true? And then they come out and be like, yo, that shit that Adam Schefter just said actually happened, is true, yada, 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 right? But in sports, I get it. And they're quote unquote in competition with each other to break this stuff. Schefter tweets it, that's good as gold. So basically he's like, bruh, 3 minutes later, why are you tweeting like your source is Adam Schefter, just like the rest of us. Like, why are you doing that? And I was like, look, the funny thing about that in terms of the attribution game, and obviously, Ethan, you're like definitely done more hardcore journalism than I have. Like, if Diana and Adam got texted by the same guy, which I'm pretty sure happened 3 minutes apart, like she has every right to be like, yo, per sources, even though I got it in a 3-minute interval afterwards, like there's nothing wrong with the tweet that she put out on her face but you have to be devoid of the context that Schefter's tweet is as good as gold. Yeah. Right. And then like we think about, and I'm like, but to what end?
Well, I guess it's for that population of people that have her on alert but aren't checking for Schefter, which I guess that person does exist. But I wouldn't mind any of it if it was just this sort of silliness, and if it was just this sort of opportunity cost of I'm focused on this, so I'm not focused on that. It's the other part you mentioned that's the real problem to me, which is they stop saying anything interesting other than the raw information because they can't step on any toes, because they get it from the agents or the GMs or whatever. And it's not just CAA. I know CAA, that's prominent, but it's a range of relationships beyond that. Mark Bartelstein represents a lot of NBA players, and that's a big Woj guy. There are a bunch of agents, and that's part of why the analysis at ESPN, and I know people might go, oh, ESPN sucks, I don't like it, blah, 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 blah. I think there were some people who are great there. We can talk about them later. But I believe firmly that this is one of the reasons why analysis at ESPN, beyond a few readouts, got boring. And it's that problem that I cannot step on the toes of sources because my industry is all about news breaking. For what economic reason, I don't even know, but that became the lodestar for a decade. And therefore, I can't criticize this guy. I can't criticize that guy. I can't criticize this coach because they're represented by the same agencies. I can't criticize this GM. It's all just sort of floating around, and it's just going to be left to people on YouTube and at the Ringer where you can express opinion. But we're not going to do it anymore. And I don't think that serves the customer. I think people want to go on ESPN and actually get some opinions from somebody other than Stephen A. Smith, who just seems like he's too big to fail, and he'll just sort of be super opinionated, not always informed, but super opinionated. And it's that trade-off that I think has been the real problem. And that's the thing that I hope with the trade of Shams for Woj, I hope that changes and people can actually express how they feel about a lot of these things instead of being subservient to this ludicrous game that you're explaining where you've got to beat somebody by a few seconds.
It's actually, and again, like as I found myself trying to explain the mechanisms of media and news breaking and scooping and sources and yada yada, I'm just like, what? Like internally, I'm just thinking about all the mental gymnastics I'm doing. I'm like, what is the fucking point of all of this? Okay, put that aside. Again, I'm friends with guys at ESPN, right? Like some of these guys are my guys. These are my boys. And, you know, I think Windhorst is as good as anybody who does this shit. Like that's just, and like people could say I'm biased. I really do think this guy legitimately has an instinct for what
I'm nodding for the Windhorst. Not that you're biased. You're biased, but I'm nodding. I'm in agreement. I just realized, by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just realized that I can with full heart, without worrying, say that Brian Windhorst is amazing. He's great. I felt a little bit shy about doing that in the past because I knew a certain somebody who used to work at ESPN was just running around Bristol looking for the mole.
He might think Brian was Judas.
Yeah, which was not the case. I don't talk about that sort of stuff with Brian, but I felt like if I gave Brian a little too much praise, then I might be causing a bit of discomfort over there. So now finally I can take a breath, I can relax and go, yes, Woz, I totally agree with you. Brian Windhorst, just amazing, great opinionist, fantastic on television, continue.
But like, I don't think it's just Wendy over there, right? Like, again, these are not people that have been elevated at the company to the extent that Woj was, because he was some huge star, apparently, right? But I think McMahon will say interesting things. Like, this is the dude that got banned by Mark Cuban. You know what I'm saying? And went back the next day. You feel me? Bon Temps will say interesting things. Obviously, you and I have been reading KP for freaking decade. Kevin Pelton for like a decade now. Yeah. These guys have interesting things to say about the league. I wonder if their stuff will be elevated. I don't know. I don't know what the sort of the reshuffling of the decks mean for the pecking order over there, right? In terms of what voices, you know, get the love or get the shine that they deserve. I just think, you know, I just found it just so fascinating these past few days where, you know, Shams comes in and he's doing basically the ESPN car wash, what they call it, where you do every single thing, and it's just freaking seamless. Another thing, to get back to your point about that Marshawn report that they were gonna get Schefter or Passan in there. Schefter, obviously the football guy, and Passan, the baseball guy, right? So if we're supposed to take what Woj used to do at face value, there's this idea that, like, through his 2 decades covering the league, he's been such a dogged reporter. He's cultivated so many sources. He's so locked in that he's an insider. He's the insider's insider because of his just dogged reporting. You know what I'm saying? Chops. Yeah, shoe leather reporting, Ethan. But yet I'm supposed to believe a dude who was covering football his whole life or a dude who covered baseball his whole life could just walk in and do the same thing. That doesn't make sense logically. Like, either this shit is a joke and these guys spoon feed you because they have an agenda and they get to spin you and therefore spin the public, or it's the other, or Jeff Passan or Adam Schefter cannot do this job. And it's actually an insult to those who are in those roles. It's an insult to the Shamses. It's the insult to the Chris Haynes. It's an insult to Steiny Moe that these guys can come in and just do like that report had me rolling. Like, wait, like, I thought the whole point of Woj was that he was just like, you can't amass all of this influence and connection. Like, how, and now I'm supposed to believe dudes that just come from a completely different sport can be locked in as inside. That doesn't make any sense.
It was an insane plan. From what I heard, it was shot down by the upper management. They had the same reaction you did, but I think the idea behind it is Woj inviting somebody onto the deck of the Starship Enterprise and going, I built this ship. This is the Bartlestein button right here. You know, we've talked about that. And here's the CAA button. Here's the Excel button. And it all just runs so smoothly and seamlessly. I think that's the vision, that it's about having news delivered to you as opposed to you relying on having been at so many G League showcases and summer leagues and the assistant coaches. And it really does, in a way, give up the game. It gives up the game. That this isn't journalism necessarily. This is something a little bit different. This is something a little bit different that I would argue, even if fans get a big kick out of, oh my God, who's going to break it first? Shams versus Woj. Shams just dunked on Woj. I think there's a market for that. I don't want to deny that. But in the end, we're just asking the same question, which is, what is this product? This product is just getting it 10 seconds sooner. That's the product. I don't know how much that does for you. I don't know why we're in this loop still. I am going to be continually fascinated until somebody can pull me aside and show me the numbers of why news breaking economically matters as to why it's commanding the biggest salary there is. It might make some sense with a Schefter who's good on TV, and it's looking like Shams is good on TV. Yeah. So I get it as a combo role, but for the thing itself, I don't know how much the thing itself is worth, especially when you're forking over $2 billion a year for NBA television rights.
Man, and I want to say this too, because I don't want to come off as like too sanctimonious about this, because ultimately we're dealing with sports and like they matter in the sense that a lot of people care about this stuff. And so that just by that truth, it matters, right? Like if people care to spend money, spend their time and energy and all of that on it, then it matters. But like, this is not like Maggie Haberman doing access journalism in politics. Like it's just the consequences just aren't as dire in terms of what it means to have such a robust market for access journalism in sports. I'm just like somebody who's watching this and who cares about the league. And, I know some of the players that are involved. I'm just like, this is just kind of hilarious. What we've been told about these guys are enemies and blah, 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 blah. And they're just like fighting each other. And that he could just come in, man, and not skip a single beat. Like that tweet appears on our phone, whether it says Shams or Woj or the New York Knicks, like all the same, that kind of stuck with me this week.
You know what my favorite part of this era was, I haven't even really mentioned it, was when they started they really started removing the curtain and revealing the magic trick when they would break these stories and go, this comes courtesy of whatever agent. This comes courtesy of, I'm trying to, like, what's a good stock agent name, regular? I'm like drawing a blank because there's a bunch of them. I'm drawing a blank on the big CAA guy. Aaron Mintz. Aaron Mintz. Yeah, Aaron Mintz, Rich Paul. And then they had these other guys who were more obscure down the line. The whole industry got very weird in this way. And you just felt as though, I don't even know what was going on behind the scenes or why this person wanted this kind of status. Like, does this really matter, you think, if you're a lower tier agent that you were mentioned in this tweet by Shams or Woj? You think that's doing something for you? But that became part of it. And I don't know how we could take it seriously. And in fairness, I think a lot of the fans, they got wise to it. I don't think a lot of fans that in the end, when Woj stepped down, you can call me a hater or call me biased, sure. But I saw a lot of fans going, I don't care. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Somebody else will break it. This guy tells me nothing. There's no opinion. It's nothing. And if there is an opinion, it's because he's trying to get back at somebody who's the enemy of somebody he relies on. That's all that's happening here. People got it. They were wise to it over the last few years.
And you know what's the most hilarious part about that, Ethan, is like, again, in journalism 101, because like, look, if you're listening to this and you don't work in media, like this is something I had to learn as somebody who didn't grow up wanting to be a journalist, right? Like for a lot of hardcore people that are in this business, it's a vocation. It's like almost no different than joining the priesthood. For real, like seriously, how a lot of people look at journalism and that job, like it's something like kind of sacred, right? And one of the tenets of this, vocation or virtue or whatever is that you never give up your source, right? Like this idea that like there's journalists that be like, yo, I died before I gave up my source. I'd go to jail before I gave up my source. Let people know who's talking to me and giving me information that I get to give to the people. And just the idea in sports journalism, you put your source in a tweet.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Just completely giving the game away. Like, dude, people were decades trying to figure out who Deep Throat was, Ethan. Decades. People were like, who the hell is Deep Throat? What the hell? And Woodward and Bernstein being like, nope, can't give it up. We can't give up our source, blah, blah, blah.
Like is Mark Felt wants credit. That comes courtesy of Mark Felt, deep state actor, responsible citizen coming out with a book. This news comes courtesy of him. That's funny, man. That reminds me,
dude. That's hilarious.
That reminds me of a good little name droppy story where I came out with this article after the finals, the offseason after the 2016 finals, where Draymond kicked LeBron in the dick. There was this whole thing. I think it was an ESPN story called the Draymond Green problem. It went too hard. I even later on apologized years later to Draymond.
Wow.
I felt like there was a lot. Well, there was a lot there. I felt like I can get into the whole thing, but one of the lessons might be when you're out to lunch with your bosses, watch out on maybe talking a little too loose about things because they might make you want to do the thing you mentioned, or that might give them a bit of information. Because I remember the bosses were out for the Super Bowl, and it was the middle of the Warriors season that winter, and I go to lunch. And they're going, oh, what's going on with this team? And I'm going, man, it's crazy. Here's how it really is. Here's how it really is. And Draymond's being like this, and blah, 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 blah. And I think I'm just talking. And next thing I know, it's you have got to write that article. I didn't know I was interviewing to write an article. And then ultimately, it's all my fault. I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. I'm trying to tell the tale of how you sort of walk yourself down and respond to certain pressures down a road that you end up being a little bit uncomfortable with the farther you get down it. Because Draymond was certainly doing things that were worthy of critique. I mean, that's obvious. There was the locker room incident in Oklahoma City, for instance, and a few other things. But at the same time, you do a rough draft for ESPN, the magazine, and there's all this salacious stuff, and you tell yourself, look, I'm going to pare it down. I'm going sort of big, rough draft. And then you have an argument on your hands. And then you go, wait a second, I didn't know that this is the case, that this isn't necessarily that when I'm called up to the big boys and I'm with the big shots and it's in the glossy, it's now a problem that I'm taking this away. I was under the impression that I was writing the articles like I usually do, right, without that kind of pressure, and I can go, yeah, that's a little bit salacious. That's a little bit hardcore right there. That's a little bit of an anonymous quote right there. But anyway, that comes out. It's a whole thing that next season, and I'm in the locker room, and I believe it was the road trip that Draymond took, and he left the team because his kid was born. So he wasn't in the locker room. And these guys started asking me on the team, hey, who was it? Like, who's the source? Who was it? Andre's saying, I mean, there's some stuff in there, like, who was it? And Steph is saying the same thing. Steph Curry, for those of you who do not know, Steph Curry is going, come on, who said it? And I said, look, I can't tell you who my source is, because if I do that, then how would anybody ever trust me? How would my sources ever trust me? And Steph goes, well, there are a lot of people in here who would trust you a lot more if you told us who the source was. It's no dice. Not a convincing argument. But I guess if you're Steph Curry and you're a big deal, like people, you usually be like, okay, Steph, here it is. I'll give up everything.
Like, he's like, you want me to be in your debt, is what he's saying. But the problem is, like, I will never be able to cultivate another source ever again for the history of my life if I do something like that.
Just point across the room. It was him. Get him.
It was Festus Ezeli. Kill him.
Oh, I love Festus. Festus, man. Love it. Festus, smart guy academically, great student, but once raised his hand in a team meeting when they were preparing to play the James Harden Rockets and asked, so is James Harden left-handed? It's just an amazing... amazing example of how there are book smarts and then there's the other sports thing, which I can relate to. My coach in JV basketball thought I was a complete idiot because he would tell me to run and play. And I just go poof out of my mind.
And you just couldn't get it down.
He was shocked that I was going to college when it was revealed years later. Anyway, where were we? What is this? Oh, yes. Yes. There's a lot of ESPN going on today, man. Mm-hmm. There's this story. There's ESPN on ESPN crime that happened today. It's shocking. This doesn't usually happen. By a guy named Dan Murphy, ESPN staff writer. No offense to Dan Murphy. I had never heard of him.
Yep.
Never heard of him.
Shouts to him, though.
Yeah, he was great on the Mets, Daniel Murphy. But now that's right. It was Dan Murphy. I remember.
Daniel Murphy.
Yeah.
Nice little white boy. He was good.
Yeah, he had like that kind of swing where you didn't expect any power from it, but it seemed like he was pretty good. Anyway, breaks this story aimed square at Kendrick Perkins, obviously on NBA, ESPN all the time, called New NIL Company Raises Red Flags for Consumer Finance Experts, which is just kind of a funny headline, I guess. And I don't know what's behind this, I don't know what's behind it. Apparently, Kendrick Perkins is getting into this whole name, image, likeness gold rush at the college level. And I'm reading from the article. The company, Nilly, offers athletes upfront payments ranging from $25,000 into the hundreds of thousands, said Perkins and his co-founder, Wall Street veteran Chris Ricciardi. That is a Northeastern name / Italian name. In return, Nilly gets the exclusive rights to use or sell the athlete's name, image, and likeness for up to 7 years. And the company and its investors receive between 10% and 50% of the player's NIL earnings during that time period. And this is all presented like it's this very scary scandal. And I read through it and I came to the conclusion that, look, I don't know what Perk's involved in. I don't think if my kid was a top athlete, I would have him take a nilly upfront payment in exchange for the percentage earnings. Kendrick Perkins is always involved in some kind of weird business. He's selling French bulldogs on the side. That's not a joke. He's quite entrepreneurial in very idiosyncratic ways, and this is one of them. But it was just so funny to me because I kind of went, where's the beef? I don't understand what the big deal is. If maybe it's not the best deal, but it was all this like a young and impressionable kid, they're signing this deal and they don't even know what they're giving up. They might be giving up 10 to 50%. And I'm looking at the whole thing and I'm going, it sounds like a better deal than college itself, where they just give you this loan and they expect you to pay it back and they're not on the hook for it. And they don't even bother to teach you anything because it doesn't matter. They got the money and it's like this, at least they give you some money up front and you don't have to pay them back a bunch of money. They just get a cut of it. Or am I missing something here? What did you think?
Yeah, I think what you're missing is what it says more broadly about the system of college athletics right now. Just the fact that the schools and the conferences as proxies don't have to pay the players directly for the money that the players are actually generating via these TV deals, ticket sales, et cetera, right? And so because they're not being paid directly from the main source of revenue in college sports, which is those big-ass TV contracts, because the players don't get a red cent of it, they have to go out and the only way to coop any money are these ancillary sort of peripheral kind of deals, and those deals can be kind of exploitative. Like that's like Kendrick Perkins and them is exploiting these kids. They are. The idea that you would take 50% of these kids' earnings for the next 7 years. This is like 50% is nuts, right? And so like and especially like if you don't come from a crazy amount of means and somebody just says, yo, here's $150K right now, and then they get to coup 40%. of your, your Dove deodorant deal, when you're 3 years into your NFL career. Like, I think they're exploiting these kids for sure. I think the main problem is that the kids are getting pushed into this unregulated, nobody's watching system in NIL, and they're being ripe for these kinds of deals. Like, just imagine if, like, we think about all the NBA players who have been ripped off by, money managers, and this guy has this business deal and that one. Like, think about if the only way for them to go out and get money for themselves was out in that world. And there wasn't this structure by which they got a fixed salary and they got their health insurance and they got the pension. And there wasn't that fixed thing. They just had to go out and get money around it while the owners and everybody else just continued to cash in so that Alabama can have they have like 100 people on staff for the football team. Like, I think that's what the story is speaking to. I think if this writer would have made that a bigger thing about why the NCAA system is fucked up, then cool. But what you're saying is Kendrick Perkins and them are just doing payday loans. It's legal. It's messed up. People that have great opportunities tend to not take out payday loans. But I mean, it's a business. This is America.
I don't know if I go as far as payday loans, because the payday loan you've got to pay back in full. And in this instance, you're given a cut if you keep making money because your stardom is increasing. But I understand the principle. I'll read a paragraph about this. To me, it feels like you are preying on people who need the capital now and using that to cloud their focus on the future, said Michael Haddix Jr., whose company Scout provides financial education seminars to college athletic departments. It feels predatory, and it's capitalizing on young people who need money and haven't thought through the long-term implications. I think that's all very fair, and it's similar to what you're saying. It's just funny to me that you could just apply this principle to college itself, which is a bigger topic. 100%. Which is a bigger topic. But 100%. I mean, it's sort of funny, this idea that, look, this is just wrong to have a teenager on the hook for some big money deal because it's expedient. This is wrong. And meanwhile, this is just how things are done. Yeah. You could be a poetry major, and we'll give you the $100,000 right up front.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans that people graduate, which is just criminal, man. To be 22 years old and have $120,000 in student loan debt. That's nuts. Like, one of my buddies went to law school. It's like $200,000. That's insane to educate yourself. So your point is taken. I just think
that's a bigger I don't expect ESPN to get into all of that. I'm smiling at the maybe it's not the irony, but this sort of the idea that just on the face of it, this is a moral outrage. And I go, well, then the entire edifice is just completely morally outrageous. And this is maybe preferable because you're not on the hook. Now, I think if you're arguing it from the Perk perspective, this isn't payday loans. This is seed investing. This is the tech world. This is Perk Andreessen over here investing in you, investing in you, investing in you. And hey, most of you guys are not going to hockey stick. You're not going to pop. This is just, you're lucky. You're getting $50K up front and you're going to be a nobody. But we're looking for that Ryan Williams type where it's just going to go all of a sudden and boom, we've got you for 7 years. And I would say this to that. I'm going to call this principle, look, because I know people think like contracts, ironclad, you sign a contract, boom, it's all done. What's weird in entertainment is this principle that I'm going to call when you're hot, you're hot. When you're hot, the contracts can be renegotiated. It's a funny thing they don't tell you. They don't tell you that. But when you're hot, when you're a big mover, when you're an absolute superstar, maybe Perk's got you on this 7-year deal for 40%, but you go to Perk and you go, dude, I'm the biggest star in college basketball. I'm not putting any energy behind your products or any of this until we renegotiate.
That's
And
it.
so maybe the mid-tier guy gets screwed on the 7 years. I don't know. But I think the people at the upper bound of it, I know they want to advertise this, but they can. I'm just giving advice. If you listening right now are a future superstar collegiate athlete, just know maybe hit Perk up for a quick payday loan, and then maybe hit him up when you feel like it's not worth your while. Just putting that out there.
I just, to me, man, like the ethics of this is like whatever to me. Like you said, like if somebody actually does pop, they can go out and be like perking them, like, yo, we got you on a eat what you kill basis. You not kill. I'm killing everything myself, so I don't have to pay you, right? Like you're not bringing these deals in, like whatever. I can do all of this on my own. Vamos. Like let's just say like the kid is like about to sign a deal with Nike because he's one of the biggest athletes. Like I'm talking to Nike directly. Like there's nothing you could do about this, right? Like there's literally nothing you could do about it, right? What I'm interested in too is because so many people in my life work in the music industry, and like that's one of the most exploitative industry that there is. But like almost every artist's main goal is to one day sign an artist who they then can exploit themselves. Yeah. Right? Like you go from being the exploited artist to like, it's like, no, I'm gonna do my own imprint. Now I'm gonna sign artists and exploit them. And then so on. And then it keeps going on and on and on. That's what this reminds me of. Like you go from being the person who's, toil, earned all this money for whatever, this league or this whatever other thing. And then now like the ultimate, like I made is like, I'm now doing that to other people. It's hilarious how the system works in that way.
Well, it's funny. Music is the exception to the when you're hot rule. Music goes, oh, Taylor Swift, you want your rights back? Oh, that's
it's
funny.
It's never happening.
That's funny. Well, good luck. See you in court. We'll figure it out. We'll hash it out over a few years because music's this strange thing where we've captured your voice. We have captured it in a bottle. And that's the main product you have, and so we don't care if you don't like it or you think it's exploitative. I mean,
and I think in music there is in music is crazy. I think it's after 30 years, basically they have to give you back shit like your publishing and all of that stuff. But like it's 30 years that if somebody signed you and they took you, and when they signed you, they was like, I have a right to your publishing. Like they get to keep your pub for 30 years. It's just a wild system. And again, that's what this reminds me of, man. The people that used to get exploited are now doing the exploiting.
Well, Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog rights back in the day, right? And that was something he could pull off. And yeah, the music industry is like that. Sports, the NIL, I think there's this aspect where for whatever reason, the athlete is more of an advertiser spokesperson, that they have a little bit more leverage than the musician does. And it's orchestrated differently. You can break a contract, you can get out of it, you can renegotiate in theory if you want to do that. But music is just, that's different. But yeah, they made the music analogy in the article. And I think there's something to it. I just think it's really funny, though, that the way it's set up, it's like, hey, when you're on the floor and playing a lot, you're being exploited. But when you get benched, I'm being exploited. And that's how it's... Paid this guy $100,000 for 7 minutes a game.
Yo,
it'd be great at TikTok.
And again, like to speak to the Wild Wild West nature of this, I don't know if you saw the thing about the quarterback from UNLV.
Oh, yeah.
3 games into the season, he's like, yo, I got promised this NIL money, and it was supposed to be a price, and I'm not playing. I'm out. I don't give a damn about my teammates. I gotta get paid. Like
Sluka. Matthew Sluka is the guy.
And the nature of this, again, is this way because the schools are not paying these kids directly with contracts and revenue splits and all of the stuff that in every other sector of professional sports, and let's stop kidding ourselves, college athletics is professional. Okay, they don't put 100,000 people in the stadium in Michigan for free. People pay for that. Okay, like it's a professional league. Like this is the only professional league where the teams and the entities themselves do not pay the workforce as if they are employees. And so that's why we have all of this weird, crazy stuff happening on the, on the periphery.
Well, people are saying that this is going to happen more often. And maybe not at the upper tier where you're risking some draft status if you look like you're a quitter. But there are some of these guys where they're just good college players, no pro future. And since this is all orchestrated with the informality of drug deals, there's going to be a lot of nope, not showing up. And this could become a real problem is what I'm hearing. I don't know if Sluka is this one-time thing or if that presages that this is just going to become a kind of trend where when guys don't get paid or they feel like they're not getting paid enough, you start breaking some of that feeling of amateurism and everybody's just happened to be here that underpins a lot of the college sports enthusiasm.
Yeah, I wonder. I tend to not think that, especially about college. I just think that the bonds and the sort of cultural attachment is so deep that I don't really worry about that too much. I just think the unofficial nature of it in a sport like college football is just, bro, this is what we're breeding. And like a kid, and this is another thing, like you hear about this stuff too, where like you hear kids, like a kid signed for quote $500,000, right? But what they don't realize is like part of that is the crib that you're staying in that you don't pay rent or mortgage in is worth $200,000. So that's what makes the deal that's $200,000 in your deal. You don't own the crib. It's not in your name. You just get to live here for free. But they're just saying like, this is a $200,000 value. The car that you're driving, another $70,000. Like you're not paying a note on it. You're not paying insurance, but you don't own it. But that's part of your compensation, right? Like I think a lot of this is just like, it's underhanded. It just is. There's something very underhanded about all of these deals, man. And the idea that all of these new people that have a lot of these NIL cats aren't even official team boosters. They're not like alumni. They're just guys that are coming in, seeing that there's a quote unquote market that's highly unregulated and trying to get in where they fit in. You know what I mean? Like I blame this shit on the NCAA and the schools for, of course, just not having the foresight and the vision to be like, yo, they can't operate like this forever. Eventually, they're just gonna have to pay the kids directly instead of getting ahead of it. It's just going to have to, like, somebody's gonna have to get shot or something off of NIL before something happens, right? Like, just imagine, Ethan, some kid signs a deal with not Kendrick Perkins, of course, like he's a prominent person, whatever. But I'm just saying, like, somebody who's not Kendrick Perkins, who might say have a street background, and that's why they're able to front guys $100,000 in cash, and then a kid reneges on a deal, and harm comes to this kid because there's no way to actually adjudicate this in any courtroom for real. And somebody gets their legs broken based on, like, that's what it's going to take.
That's a key point. The lack of process is something that's not taken seriously, but that can lead to violence when there's no authority to appeal to, because that's something that the system provides that maybe we sometimes don't give enough credit to, because when there's no system in place, no system to appeal to, people settle it like the Wild West. That's what happens when money's at stake. I mean, this makes me wonder. Now I'm thinking about the whole thing. Are you pro Deion Sanders or anti Deion Sanders as this new kind of crazy NIL symbolic of how this is all just a new world? I didn't know I follow this a little bit. They've only lost once. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, they pulled out some pretty close games. Like the team, they still have offensive line issues.
I thought they were supposed to stink this year. That's what everybody was saying. Everybody said they were going to be terrible.
I think there's still time left for that to happen. It's just that the quarterback and Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter are like incredible. Yeah. Like these guys are just literally elite athletes. They got them playing incredible.
3 positions.
It's insane. I mean, the Deion thing for me is like I'm not precious about college football, right? And so I love that he's making things more interesting and people are more likely, like the stories coming out of it are interesting. Obviously, the way he goes about being a prominent college football coach is way different than people have done it before. And I think that's what folks are sort of bristling at. It's just coaches aren't supposed to carry it like this, but like it's college football, man. Like these guys are supposed to be characters. And I love the idea that Deion is making himself into a character in this story of this sport. And so I don't have a problem with it. I don't believe in college football tradition. Like, like this is the sport where like I think it was an Auburn alumni like poisoned some trees at Alabama or like vice versa. Like
I remember that.
This is the sport we're talking about. People kidnapping mascots, like kidnapping bulldogs and cows and shit. Like this is the sport we're talking about. So to get all precious about Deion and him not respecting the norms and being more humble or whatever is ridiculous to me.
That's I don't care about that. It just seems like there's been an edge to it. It seems like the joy has kind of gone out. And maybe, looks like, I'm sure maybe they're not favored this weekend. They're playing Kansas State. I have no idea. I don't follow it. Doesn't matter. This is not evergreen to even discuss it. It just seemed like there was a bit of an edge. There was a bit of a discarding these kids and, very unceremonious. And I didn't get my dander up about it. But it seemed like it was more of a fun story. And then it got a little bit more grim. But it's interesting. It's intriguing. It was fun to have Cal be good for like 30 minutes. That was fun to have Cal football, to have game day here with Pat McAfee and everybody going crazy. And it looks like they're going to beat Miami and And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember why this is fun. I remember why people are into this. And then it all goes. I'm fascinated by just how college football has continued to grow in relevance despite all of the money and despite all of the corruption. And I don't think this was predicted. I think people said, hey, all these other sports are going to grow and college football is too provincial and has all these problems. But it seems like even discarding all of the conferences and tradition and paying the players, it hasn't mattered. It's popular.
Yeah, because they're offering something that like there's nothing else like it anywhere else, right? Like the provincial nature to me is the selling point, right? Like that Alabama and Auburn and OU and Texas and all of these places have these very distinct cultures and histories that like they're constantly drawing upon, right? Like the past is part of the present in college football in a way that it just isn't in the other sports. I think that's part of what people are drawn to. And again, the characters, like Dabo Swinney can't exist the way that he does in professional football. Like the professional nature of it is like pro play, like you would get ran out of town immediately. And I think probably rightfully so in a pro setting, but because it's college and because this shit is so wacky, and local, it's just like so much of this just feels like local yokels, like so much of it does feel small time-ish, small towny, right? I think that's the specific appeal of it, man. It's not this, cosmopolitan, coastal elite sort of thing. It's something, it's in a lot of ways, it's completely rejecting that. And goes against that. And that's what makes it different from everything else. That to me is what makes it matter. Like that these people still care. Like Alabama and Auburn fans will always hate that other team. Like hate them. And they will spend time in freaking June in the off season screaming about these teams and stuff like that. Like that shit just doesn't exist, man. In other places.
Well, you make a great point that the deeply rooted nature of it is part of the appeal. And the whole idea behind the Lindy Effect is that which has gone on for a long time will tend to go on for a long time, because it's not like at some point they go, Auburn, you better build us a new stadium or we're moving the team. We're moving the team. We're moving it to Nashville. We're moving the team to Nashville. You got to build us a stadium. They don't do that kind of thing of leaving. They're always there. They've been always there. As long as the university is there, they're going to keep going. And it's been kind of nice to see. I mean, college football is messed up. It's corrupt. It's whatever. But it feels like out of the pandemic, it's nice just to see crowds of happy young people. And it almost has become a real American meeting ground. I wrote about how the algorithm is funny because it's almost like self-aware Berkeley fans having a laugh at how they're the lefty woke school in the ACC they're being self-aware. And it's fun and it's funny and it's fine. And there is just something to Pat McAfee McAfee's not a guy who's explicitly political, but I think codes right, at least in the eyes of the media. He's somebody where after Trump gets shot, he'll say that it was impressive or that, Trump, I don't even remember what he said, but I'm sure it raised the hackles of some other people at ESPN, but whatever. I don't care. I'm just saying that between that and having Aaron Rodgers on, he codes a certain way, but he goes to game day in Berkeley and he's going, this is one of the finest cities in America. And I'm watching him going, man, I don't even think that. Well, I'm glad you had a great time, but I don't.
He's good at what he does, and again, I like college football is the only thing that offers this, right? Like Catholics versus convicts, you just can't have that in the pro context. Like it doesn't exist. It's like so much of it, like you said, is so freaking provincial, man. Down to what's his name? Brian Kelly gets hired at LSU and at one of his first major pep rallies, he puts a fake accent. I love that. Nobody would do that after becoming the Atlanta Hawks head coach. No. They just wouldn't. They just wouldn't show up to the next Hawks press conference and feel like they had to put on a Georgia accent. But in college football, Brian Kelly's like, yo, this is what we do here. It's hyper local.
I feel like Missoula is really messing up by not going with his old accent. Have you seen clips of him as a college player? I think he's a Rhode Island. I think he's a Rhode Island guy.
Got you.
Which is a lot like being a Boston guy.
Yeah.
And I saw him interviewed as a college basketball player, and he sounds like Peter Griffin. And I'm going, bring that guy back.
Yeah, he needs
I want that guy. That's just incredible to me. But yeah, people don't put on a fake accent when assuming the role of a pro. I think that is such a great observation that hey, we were all making fun of him for the fake LSU accent, but it speaks to the intensity of college sports and college football, especially in the South, that you would even fake it like that you would even code switch it like that and hope to get away with it and pander in that direction. It's beautiful, man. Well,
bro, and some of the stories, Ethan, man, coaches getting fired because they use their expense account at a strip club or escorts and just the craziest stories come out of this sport too. And that to me is a big part of the charm and the appeal.
I would agree. I miss when Coach O is what I called that Cajun man who coached LSU. I'm even trying to remember how to pronounce his name, but I miss him. I miss when he was riding high.
So good.
Coach Obregon? Is that how we say it?
Ogeron.
Yeah. See, I can't even remember. You can tell I'm not much of a college football fan. Yeah, man. So I think we've covered the relevant topics. I think it's been a great podcast. Is there anything else out there as we wrap up?
Just the Jets firing their freaking coach 5 games into the season is just so freaking Jets. The thing about owners, man, that cracks me up, and it's and these dudes who are like these masters of industry. The Jets have not made the playoffs since 2010. And we know in any other company, failing 14 years in a row, like at a certain point, like you would have the self-awareness to be like, yo, I probably shouldn't be doing this job anymore. But Woody Johnson just gets to run the operation into the freaking ground. And of course, the most influential person is a 40-year-old quarterback who I'm watching our offense is the most predictable. I feel like defensive coordinators, when they're watching our tape, like, this shit is easy. Oh my God. Like, I don't even have to think about how to defend this team. Like, they don't make you think. And it's like Aaron Rodgers, like, yo, I don't fuck with play action. Yo, motion takes too long. I need to have the freedom to snap when I want to and blah, blah, blah. And like the only throws that you can make have to be with receivers that have known you since you were 17 years old. It's just like, it's ridiculous. And then you fire the head coach. But whatever. I just seen that they fired Hackett, which I'm really happy about. Because that guy stinks. And I'm never that person that's like, yo, this guy needs to be fired. He'll be fine. He'll work in the NFL again or whatever. But that mess has just been killing me.
It's a mess. Justice for Robert Saleh. I have no idea really if he deserved the job or not. I just felt like when you're a defensive coach and the defense is good, I go, okay, you did your job.
Yeah,
you did your job. Let's bring in an offensive coordinator, one of these hot shots.
Yeah,
like that guy they got in Detroit. One of these young, a Slowick, just one of these hot shots, and they can run the offense. But you did your job. Now, if you're a defensive coach and your team stinks at defense, you're the head coach, then you got to go. Yeah, but Bobby Saleh, I like him based on what went on with the 49ers, and I wish him the best with his 7 children. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible to have 7 children, be an NFL coach. Waz, what do you want to promote for us? I know you got a lot going on as the NBA season starts to ramp up.
Man, just we're counting down the power rankings over at Ringer NBA of the best teams in the season, just sort of like a guide to this NBA season. So just go check that out on the Ringer, man. Ringer NBA show group chat with me, Justin Verry, and Rob Mahoney.
Great stuff, man.
All right, y'all.
See ya.